Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 11th of November. We are coming close to the end of the year. What a crazy year it has been so far. And this is Indexer Office Hours 233. Thank you for posting the agenda in the comments there, Juan. For anyone who is new to Indexer Office Hours, this is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexes. As always, as I like to say, this is a conversation and we do love participation. So feel free to get involved in today's conversation via voice or text. And if you're having any challenges with your microphone in terms of getting involved today, do let me know and I'll get that sorted for you. Another reminder, this session is going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Carlos for the Repo Watch section. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Repo Watch. So this past week, I'm going to start with a dicier one. We have a new red releases. So they have a patch version for the 1.8 miner, and it's now at 1.8.4. And they also released a miner bump to 1.9.0, which was quickly followed by a hotfix to a patch version. It is not recommended at this point to upgrade to 1.9. They will be working on a more on a patch that is not an hotfix, so a proper patch, and are advising to wait for that. So for the time being, you should be running 1.8.4 and keep your eyes on a proper patch for the 1.9 branch. We have a new get release from Streaming Fest for Go Ethereum 1.16.7, and so it's based on Guess 1.16.7, which does have some important security fixes. So it's also worth keeping an eye on upgrading to these ones for anyone running Guess or forks of Guess. We have new Nethermind. We're now at 1.35.2, a new Avalanche 1.14.0, that's a minor bump, and I'm bundling this together because they are related to the upcoming hard fork on Ethereum. So still some healthy churn going along there. We also have a new minor version for Arbitrum Nitro. It's now 3.8.0. It is not a mandatory upgrade. It does include a wide variety of fixes, but the word out is you do not need to urgently upgrade to this one. It's always scary to upgrade minor versions, especially on Nitro, which is a very huge data set. On the consensus layer client, we also have a new release from Prism, a major one, so it's now 7.0.0. Presumably, this will be the major version to support the hard fork on December 3. And as such, you do have to upgrade before that timeline. Moving on to the graph stack, we have a new patch version from graph nodes. This is an interesting one. So it's now 0.41.1. So the previous one, when we went to 41.0, it did include a bug fix, which was fixing a bug which some people did consider a feature, which was that you could ask for a set when an empty array of subgraph IDs, it will just give you all of them as a result. And they fixed that bug, and now they reversed it because, well, it did break some use cases. The option to actually get a full list of the subgraph IDs by just querying status on an empty list. So that's all it does. If it did break use cases for you, you probably want to upgrade. If not, there's no other changes to this patch version. Over to the Launchpad stack, that new chart releases pretty much for the latest upstream versions of the things we're releasing charts for. So it's ProxyD, Nimbus, Lighthouse, Heimdall v2, GraphNode, Aragon, and Arbitrum Nitro. Those are all at the latest upstream versions now. And that's it for this week on Report. So ending off to
Thanks, Carlos. Okay, getting into Protocol Watch, I'll try to be brief so we have a lot of time for the guests today. Forum governance, we don't have any new updates. For the forum research category, we have two of the core dev updates that were missing last week. Unfortunately, they were published just after IOH, so I didn't get to cover them last time, but it's the core dev updates for Pinax and Streaming Fast. If you're interested in any of those, again, as always, they're pretty lengthy, so the links are in the agenda. For the contracts repository, we have a few things that we will be covering later, like the Horizon mainnet deployment. It's the PR that's preparing everything for when we are ready to launch to mainnet. Then another to adding customer parsing to toolshed, and one to add fees provision tracker to the iProvision tracker interface. For the network subgraphs, we've been, as you probably are aware, anyone that's participating in testnet, we've been deploying a bunch of new subgraphs for Arbitrum Sepolia, which include Horizon fixes. We will probably, as we continue with testing, push some other changes there to make sure that everything's working correctly before we proceed to mainnet. So both the core network subgraph and the analytics subgraph are going to be, and are actually being constantly updated. Yeah, I know, but you never know. And we've been publishing, I think we published like 3 or 4 versions in a week, which is more than we did in a year in Arbitrum Sepolia. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Protocol Watch. I'm going to be handing over to Kate now.
Similar to last week. Again, we have rewards live for Chapel, Sepolia, and Unichain. We have indexing rewards that will be deprecated from Blast, Boba, and Fuse, and Mode by November 25th. And I'll keep tagging folks or tagging indexers in the indexer announcement channel as we get closer to that window where you can close allocations. And we have Studio being deprecated on November 25th as well for Blast and Fuse. Studio's already been deprecated for Mode at this point, and Boba will remain on Studio as well. We did update, I believe, the messaging that had been in the subgraph development channel was updated as well. To reflect the different options that users on these chains have in terms of seeking out potentially independent indexing support or other options and migration options. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. And we are also going to be doing more coordinated communication regarding studio support. We got some feedback last week around the injective announcement, so I did talk internally to some folks and keep me looped in so I can share messaging with the indexer community so you guys are in the loop there as well, even for Studio. So yeah, just keep a watch on that channel. I usually tag indexers in there when I have an announcement related to anything like that, but we are hearing your feedback and we are making actions to better communicate what's going on. So thank you.
Alrighty, thank you everyone for your sections there. As some of you are probably going to guess, we have 2 guests today based on the audio check there. One is Tomas, who's going to tell us all about Horizon, and then we have Rem, and is Samuel here as well from Edgenode? I'm not sure.
Hello.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here.
okay, Moonboy, here he is. Okay, we've got Sam and also Rem who are going to tell us all about the rewards eligibility, the REO, the rewards eligibility oracle. So first, I think it's going to be Tomas because it's a quick update, about 15 minutes, right, Tomas? Yeah, without further ado, Tomas, feel free to take it away. And then after that, we'll get into the rewards eligibility oracle. It's a mouthful, that one is. Okay, cool. Tomas, you ready?
Yeah, ready. Cool. Yeah, so thanks again for having me. Not sure if this is the last time for Horizon, but we're getting almost done. So yeah, I'm gonna provide a few updates. First, I want to talk about testnet. and then I'll talk a little bit about mainnet. So in terms of testnet, last couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I lost track of time already. We've been testing Horizon on 𝗨𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗪𝗀𝗀 𝗨𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀. We've gone through all of the upgrade stages, everything looking good. From our end, we run, we have two different test plans. One is specifically aimed to indexers, right? It contains, testing basic indexer operations, day-to-day stuff, allocation management, stake management, etc. And that's like a document with test cases and a test plan that we've circulated around, and several indexers have participated in that. So we went through that. That's probably the most important one that we get right. But we also have a different one, like internal one, which contains essentially it's like a similar document describing things to test, but that covers the rest of the protocol participants, right? Delegation, delegators, curators. We also have an arbitration system, so arbitrators need to be able to accept disputes. Fishermen need to be able to create disputes. We also have governance that can set parameters, change some of the behavior. Protocol post guardians can post the protocol. So there's a whole lot of other roles or participants that can interact with the protocol. That also, we need to make sure that everything looks good there. So that's the other, thing that we've been taking care of in the past couple of weeks, making sure that's all looking good and solid. And in general, I think we've had quite a good testing phase so far. As I mentioned, I think we had like 5 or 6 indexers independently, running through these test plans, and then, they hopefully all use different setups, different ways of deploying indexer components, different ways of configuring, upgrading, etc. So that gives us some variance there, which is nice. And we've had quite a few bugs found by the indexer community, found by us, some very tricky and gnarly edge cases involving, pretty much all of the components. Gateway, network, subgraph, notoriously tricky to work around, because indexing from we make a change on indexing, it might take like maybe a day or so. But yeah, I mean, it was a good exercise. At this point, we are quite confident moving forward with the upgrade to mainnet. I believe there are 2 minor issues still pending to be solved on the Graph Explorer end. One is just like provide better explanation when an error is happening, which is something we can do to provide like a better UX. And then the other one is a visualization bug where the Explorer is showing data in a format that it shouldn't, or things like that. So those are being addressed as well during this week. I'm sure that will be done. But other than that, I think we've addressed all of the findings, all of the problems we've found. And as I mentioned, we've gone through all of the test cases, all of our test plan documents that we've created previously, and we are like, in terms of confidence, I think we're confident on moving to mainnet at this point. There is minor thing left to test on testnet, which is the transition period end. Those that have been following the upgrade, the upgrade has like a 4 stages or 4 phases. After the 4th one, like we were officially like live with Horizon, but then sometime after that, like a month or 2 months after Horizon, we have that 2 months or a month and a half of transition, where mostly the only thing that's different is thawing. During that transition period, again, this shouldn't be the first time I'm mentioning this, but during that transition period, there's like this double thawing for indexers if you want to take your stake from the protocol. So essentially, the transition period end marks the end of that, and after that, it's like a single thawing, same that has been, what we all expect. So yeah, we will be executing a transaction on testnet to mark the transition period end, probably tomorrow. There is not much to test with that, just that you can unstake without this double thawing. But we will post a message in Discord if any of the indexers or anyone wants to do that last bit of testing. That would be nice. But yeah, overall, to wrap up, the testnet story, we are quite happy with how it went. We found, important bugs, tricky bugs, most of them related to the transition between one network state and the new one. And we are moving forward to mainnet. And that's happening real soon. In fact, let me share my screen, because it's already started in a way. Can you guys see my screen?
Just loading for me. Should be, yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, cool. Where is it here? Oh. Okay. So, again, as mentioned, the upgrade has 4 phases. The 4 phases plus the transition period, they all add up to about 3 months ish. So that's quite a lot of time. So we have already started with the first phase. So last week, we executed phase 1. And perhaps a good thing to remind here is that phase 1, 2, and 3 do not modify the network state in any way. So really, right until phase 4, like at any point we can stop this process and like no harm's done, right? We don't need to roll back anything. We don't need to change anything. Worst case scenario, like if an indexer has upgraded to Horizon compatible versions and we find something that's horribly wrong in production in mainnet, worst case scenario, they will have to downgrade their indexer components back to whatever their current latest non-Horizon version is. But that's pretty much like the worst that could happen. So since this is like a quite long upgrade, we've already started with phase 1, which is mostly deploying proxy contracts for some of the new contracts that we'll deploy eventually, and having the council sign a transaction to like kind of register those in like an internal protocol database that's on chain. So phase 1, 2, and 3 are really just like setting up the contract, setting up the off-chain components. There are some dates here. As you see, this is being updated sort of in real time. And the important one for the indexer community here is this one, right? Once we execute phase 3, we will also deploy the temporary subgraph for Horizon. And once that subgraph is synced, which I expect that to be end of this week, early next week, or during the weekend, maybe, that will officially kick off the upgrade window for indexers. And that's 3 weeks or so where indexers need to upgrade their components to the Horizon version. They need to, configure whatever new variables are. We have a guide for that. So yeah, if you've been following the upgrade so far, like this shouldn't be any news. But this is the main, call to action for indexers is be on the lookout. We will post an announcement pretty much in every channel that we have later on this week to, let everyone know that they are free to upgrade their stack to Horizon. And then the other important date is obviously December 9th, which is when we are going live with the last phase. So these are the important dates. You'll see there is like on each phase, we have like a decision criteria to whether or not to continue with the next phase. This is mostly like internal stuff, but as I mentioned, like we can stop the upgrade at any point, like as long as it's before the last phase. If we think that it's like, we notice something weird or something unsafe or, some unexpected, something unexpected happens. Right, so this is the schedule. Trying to think if there is anything else I wanted to cover here. I think this pretty much it. The only other thing is that we will be monitoring like indexer progress or like the migration progress in a way. Like the indexer endpoints expose the stack that's being run by the indexer, so we can know remotely like which indexers have upgraded and which haven't. And that's like another metric that we will be keeping an eye out for in case, like if it's December 9th and we have a single indexer that has migrated for some reason, we will obviously not execute the upgrade because that's not going to bode well. But please let us not that happen. So yeah, be on the lookout for the announcement. We will share the links, the guides, everything we've been sharing in the past, couple months. Discord, forums, yeah. And the other ask that I have is that once that we release this announcement later this week, is that you spread the news. We have contact with many indexers, but there are also many indexers that are either anonymous or like we don't know who they are. And we don't know if they watch these, the usual communication channels. So if you are in some other, indexer private group where you chat about the graph and whatnot, spread the news. And yeah, let's get it done and move on to the next big thing. I haven't kept that with chat. I don't know if there are any questions. Yes, Abel, please start spreading the news.
Indeed. No questions so far, but I see a few people typing. So I'll make the space for folks to ask questions. I see Mark Andre's typing. Yeah, let's get the questions in.
I'm sharing the link to this schedule as well.
Perfect.
But again, we will have like a proper announcement coming out later this week.
There you go. You heard it here first, ladies and gents. Announcement coming soon. Big
There's
day.
also sorry, Abel.
No, go ahead.
The Graph birthday party on December 3rd. We wanted to, make those two dates coincide, but yeah, it was close. We couldn't make it happen. But yeah.
Almost
hype
there.
December. Almost
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. And December will be a fun month for the graph. Lots of things happening. So Mark Andre says a big day, December 9th. Everyone should plan to be available on that day. There could be surprises with the network subgraph, component hotfixes, orphan subgraphs, etc., which I completely agree on. Folks, mark your calendars for that day because it's going to be very, very important. So yeah, good to see Mark Andre's on top of that, and yeah, I hope all the indexes are too. Big day for arbitration too. Yeah, definitely. Joke. Lots of people gonna be slashed. Any questions, folks? Make sure we get those questions answered because we do have Tomas here to share his thoughts and answer any questions. Just to make sure everyone's good, and there's no ifs or buts or maybe about migration and what needs to be done on December 9th. Keep the graph tradition alive to do big things just before Christmas.
I'm not sure it's a good tradition, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's funny. It's like everybody's like rushing to squeeze in something before the year's end. Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Last Friday before 25th, last Friday before 25th December is the tradition. Yeah, fair enough. As long as, although it's long before Christmas by graph standards. Yeah, Aria will be after. Yeah, no deployer in December. Yeah, that's funny. Nice. Good stuff. Any questions, folks, before we move on to the next subject? Want to make sure everyone's questions are answered. If we miss the deployment window, we'll have to wait until December 2026. Jesus. Oh man. MIPS mission on that was crazy. That's nuts. MIPS was it's a very special time. Lots of learnings there for sure. That was a very, very busy time for sure. I'm not seeing any questions here, so I'm going to assume we don't have any. But if you do, guys, please shout and stop me, and I will make sure to direct those to. Uh... That's great,
Oh my
Slim. I
God.
don't know how you got that. That's really cool. Did you must have edited that yourself, right? There you go. Like you just
Things you do with Paint when you're listening to IOH.
Nice. Very creative. I like it. Oh, very good. Yeah, well that's good foreshadowing for the next topic. I want to introduce Rem to the stage, and Samuel as well, also known as Moonboy, who's going to talk to us a bit about REO and also how that's going to happen in December and not January and not December. Okay, guys, feel free to take it away.
Sure. So don't have all that much time, and there's probably quite a few things to cover. I do have a bit of a walkthrough planned. Just helps you put into context. Okay, why are we doing it? How does it work, etc. Samuel's got some great detail on some of the data aspects and how we determine eligibility. But before I start,
Just a quick one, Rem, if I'm okay. Just to give you, just to let you know, you have the option to do a part one, part two. So we'll try and get through everything we can this week, but just know that I'll make space next week because I know we squeezed in 2 updates this week and it might be tricky to get everything you wanted to get done today. So I'll make space next week in next week's IOH. So don't feel rushed at all through any of these topics.
Okay, that's fantastic because I think it's better to let everyone explore all the questions, etc. And very happy. I'll try and run through the high level I've got today and see what questions come up. But I was just going to invite everyone. Just put in the chat if you like. I mean, you're welcome to also speak up, but just put in the chat. Have you read the GIP? GIP says 79. Do you kind of know what the rewards eligibility oracle already is? Are there any particular questions you have, etc.?
Does anyone have the link handy? I'm just gonna try and grab it now, but if anyone has it handy, would be
Just
great. Yeah.
just been put there. Okay.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Moonboy.
I'm going to start going through it, but keep, if at any point you have some questions or something, just keep still putting them in the chat while I start. Now, I'll basically go through a little bit of a explanation of what's happening currently and why we, oops, and my presentation seems to have frozen. Here we go.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
It all suddenly on one go. Okay, so from an indexer's point of view, obviously the first thing you do as you open an allocation, you're all very familiar with this, and you do one of two things basically. The first thing you do is you index, so you perform some indexing. At some stage, you end up closing your allocation, provide a POI, and the rewards manager essentially at that stage validates your POI, checks that it's a valid subgraph, that it's not a subgraph that's on the deny list, and if all's well, you receive your indexing rewards. All good. Now, the other thing, of course, you do, the reason we are doing the indexing is so that you can serve queries and provide value to the users of the network, which I think is actually what gives value to the network. And you've probably seen there are quite a few exciting other things coming up. This part's actually very important, right? To increase the value of the network over time, we need to make sure we're providing great service and being able to bring more people to the network as a range of services expands, etc. Now, of course, sometime after serving the queries, you initiate collection of the query fees. Basically, won't go into too much detail, but we validate the allocation and you receive query fees. But the challenge here, of course, and I think everyone's basically aware of this, from the indexing side, of course, the indexing is mandatory. You have to do it to get any rewards, but serving queries is optional. So although there's an additional revenue stream associated with serving queries in its own right, it is quite possible to sit on the network and not really serve any queries and just get the indexing from the indexing side, which is pretty much defeating the purpose of doing indexing, because the purpose of indexing is so that you're ready to provide value to consumers. And that is why we are introducing the rewards eligibility oracle, which I'll probably just refer to as REO from now on, because actually even I find that a little bit of a mouthful. Now the oracle, I'll describe it as really being split into two parts. There's if you like, there's an off-chain part and there's an on-chain part. So off-chain essentially will have a number of nodes running. So you have an eligibility oracle node, if you like. And what that node ends up doing is it's getting the data of the queries that have been served. And but based on the fantastic work that Samuel's done in terms of figuring out what constitutes I won't go into too much detail now, because actually the initial criteria are very lightweight, but I think Samuel can go into more detail later on that. The node then decides, based on the data that's been collected, does this show that the indexer has actually been serving data, on the network and therefore is adding value to the network or not. And this then gets pushed on chain into a contract. So the node then essentially calls a contract to renew the eligibility of that indexer, and the nodes we have currently are basically doing this on a daily basis. And once the eligibility has been renewed, essentially at the moment, it means that even if nothing else happens, you are going to be eligible for 14 days. From that, basically the contract provides an answer to the question of, is this indexer eligible? And that needs to be linked back into this top chain. So basically what you can see here is that this box, which was previously just validate the proof of indexing and the subgraph, is now also going to check the eligibility. It's a rewards manager doing that. And if that check is passed, then you still receive indexing rewards as usual. If it's not, if it's an indexer that's not serving any queries on the network, then they can't claim rewards. Any questions at that point? I suspect most of that's known to most of you. Everyone's quite silent at that stage. At this stage, a couple of things can happen. One, I can hand over to Samuel, who can talk you through more of the detail.
Got a question?
Yeah, sure. So any minimum.
Yeah.
So yes, and I'll let Samuel start to answer these questions. I do know the answer to this, but as this elaborates, he's the expert on this side.
Yeah, so I guess I'll probably just save that for when I start presenting, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. In that case, from that point of view, I'm probably going to hand over to Samuel unless someone has a question for me. But let me do that. Let Samuel take over, and any questions that come up, I'll have to answer.
Alrighty, Samuel, if you have the ability to share a screen, go ahead and we can get the show on the road. Nice.
Okay, it should be live now.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. All right, so I guess what I'd like to walk through to kind of start off is the flow or the architecture of the Oracle and just how it works. Just to kind of give maybe a high-level overview of the code base, but as a visual format rather than a deep understanding of what the code is actually doing. We can just focus on kind of like the things that it checks, the things that it does, and how it runs. So to assist that, I've created this mermaid diagram. And essentially, we can see this blue box here, which is kind of visualizing the Docker container that the rewards eligibility oracle lives inside. And it all kind of starts off with a scheduler, which is essentially just scheduling a daily run of the oracle. So what it's looking for is the scheduled time, which is configurable to have passed, and as soon as that time has passed, then it will trigger the main loop of the code base. So the rewards eligibility oracle starts, and the first thing it's doing is checking should I run, and the reason for this is essentially to prevent a situation where we could have an infinite restart loop. So essentially, the first thing that we're doing is just checking this circuit breaker to see has there been more than 3 failures in the last 60 minutes. And the way that we do that is that we're reading a failure log from a mounted storage volume, and we're checking the timestamps of any recent failures, so that they're all retained within this log. And if there's been more than 3 of these failure timestamps, then essentially what we're doing is making sure that the Oracle doesn't automatically go into this loop, or it could continue to start up and then something might be misconfigured, or maybe there's some kind of a network glitch, or an RPC failure, or some kind of an external issue. Maybe it's BigQuery, whatever it might be. We just kind of want to make sure that it's not always continuing to restart in a situation where it's not going to be able to continue. And we'll see in a minute that it also sends a notification to us in Slack. So as a team, we would be aware that if it did enter this kind of, if you will, edge case, then we would see that in our notifications, and also we would see that on chain. And then someone in the team would be able to take a look and see what the problem is. But so that's kind of more the alternative path, or the alternative logic. And the main logic, so over the last few months, the Oracle has been running, and it's been running successfully. And when it's been doing this check to see if there's been more than 3 failures in the last 60 minutes, it's been essentially saying no, there hasn't been that many failures. And then we go into this data pipeline. So here, first of all, we're checking to see if we have recent cached data available. So if there has been a failure, then there's likely some recent cached data that we could use instead of sending another query to BigQuery. We already have this data, so it's actually more efficient to just use what we already have. And as we kind of go through the flow, this will kind of make more sense. So for now, I'll just say the base case is that there is no recent data available, and we need to go out and get it. So we kind of like open this BigQuery, Google BigQuery step, and we're fetching indexer performance data over the last 28 days. This is the current eligibility criteria. So we query the data from BigQuery. BigQuery is an external dependency, so it happens outside of our Oracle container, and then Google BigQuery is returning this data back to us. And some of the things that we're looking for example, is how many days have indexers been online? How many subgraphs are they serving queries on? And just overall kind of like what is the performance of their query responses? So are their responses coming back as being 200 okay? Are they less than 50,000 blocks behind chainhead? And is the latency of the response under 5,000 milliseconds? So that's kind of how we start to look at this criteria. So we're actually applying these filters and ensuring that these criteria are met. And we'll take a look in a second exactly if it's not clear already what the criteria is. I have to open another tab so we can look at that. So yeah, then we're essentially just making sure that we have this filter, these lists, the indexer addresses that are eligible for issuance based on these criteria, and those indexer addresses that would not be eligible based on the criteria. So we generate the CSVs of this, and we're saving those CSVs into our mounted data storage volume. And if you recall, when I sort of proposed this, do we have recent cached data available from BigQuery? So when we evaluate this question, what we're actually checking is this data storage volume. So essentially, if we had got to the point where this data was saved, and this data is less than 30 minutes old, then we can actually just read from that data volume instead of having to do this BigQuery loop. It's just kind of like an efficiency step, and it speeds things up a bit. So that's why that's there. So assuming everything has gone well, now what we're doing is trying to submit this data on chain. I'm just noticing that I can't scroll down anymore. Okay, that's odd. Okay, we can see it from this view. So we tried to submit this data on chain. And due to gas limits, it's actually better to batch indexer addresses into groups of 125 indexes. So if you could imagine at some point in the future, maybe we have thousands or tens of thousands or beyond that of eligible indexes, then essentially we're just batching the eligible indexes into groups of 125 addresses, and then for each batch, we want to try and submit that batch on chain. So we connect to an RPC provider, and at the minute there's a pool of 4 RPC providers that we're using. There's nothing really to stop this pool from growing to 100 RPC providers if we want, but just kind of for now, 4 has been fine. And because this is an external dependency, it's happening outside of our Oracle container. So we connect to one of the RPC providers in this pool, not to all of them. We just try to connect to one. And then one of 2 things will happen. So the base case is that the connection goes well, and we can build a transaction, estimate the gas that it's going to cost, sign the transaction, and try to submit that transaction on chain using the RPC provider. And if everything is confirmed, then we loop back to the top here and we check have we submitted all of our batches yet? And if we have, then essentially this marks the end of the schedule. So we will send a Slack notification to our team channel to see that the data was submitted on time on chain, and just some high level monitoring, and then essentially we go back to the top and we wait for the next scheduled trigger. The alternative path here is that when we try to submit this transaction, or when we try to connect to the RPC, if there was some kind of a failure of any kind, it could be that the RPC is not responding, it could be some transient network glitch, whatever it might be, then the first thing that we would do is just, okay, let's rotate to the next RPC provider. And even actually before that, we do try to establish this connection multiple times. There's an exponential backoff. But if after all connection attempts, none of them are successful, then we can just rotate to the next provider. And a lot of the time that will fix the problem. It could just be that the RPC endpoint is down for whatever reason. So if the connection is then successful with the next provider, then we just repeat those same steps again. And we try to stick to whatever provider was last successful. So when we evaluate if we have any more batches, then we will repeat the next set of batches with the same provider that we had success with in the past. Now, what happens if all of the providers in this pool of 4 are unsuccessful? It's actually more likely than not that it's a misconfiguration problem on our side rather than one of the RPC or all of the RPC providers is down. But it could be the case that the RPCs are down as well. So yeah, if all providers have been exhausted, we actually take both of these paths. So one is that we send a notification to our Slack channel, and then someone in the team can be aware, or multiple people. And what we do is we stop the container with an exit code of 1, which means that the container will attempt to restart. We'll still get this notification, and then we essentially do the entire loop again. However, we would record a failure in this failure log. So when we get to the circuit breaker step, when we read this log, we'll see, oh, look, there was a failure within the last 60 minutes. But when we evaluate this question, has there been more than 3 failures? The answer, at least initially, should be no. So we would repeat all these steps again until, if we get to this point again, then we would record a second failure. And then if this evaluates to yes, there have been 3 failures in the last 60 minutes, then we would take this alternative path, and we stop the container with an exit code of 0. Another Slack notification is sent, and the container wouldn't restart under this condition. And someone in the team would just need to take a look at what the problem was. They can read through the container logs, or take a look to see if the configuration is correct. And the logs are quite verbose, so it should be readily apparent what the problem is to start with. So I've also provided another diagram here, which kind of explains the restart loop for the circuit breaker. I think I've explained this quite well so far, but we can go into this as well. So we have this main module for the rewards eligibility oracle, and it's communicating. These are all of our Python modules. So we have the rewards eligibility oracle module, a blockchain client module, a circuit breaker module, and a Slack notification module. And the first module, the rewards eligibility oracle, is communicating with the blockchain client module. It calls batch allow indexers issuance eligibility, which is one of the functions in the code base. And when it calls that function, we go into this main loop, as I've kind of already explained. So we try to execute the RPC with the provider. If the provider fails after 3 attempts with exponential backoff, then we can raise a connection error, which is catched, and then we just rotate to the next provider, and also send a notification to Slack. And only in the case where all the providers are exhausted, then we can raise a final connection error, which is then recorded inside the circuit breaker with a timestamp, and a final failure notification is sent to Slack. So we're kind of getting these notifications at every step along the way if something goes wrong. And at least initially, we get this exit code of 1, which triggers a restart. But if there are more than 3 errors in the last 60 minutes, then there would be an exit code of 0. So I think if anyone wants to take a look, then I can just copy that link and put it in the chat. Yeah, and I guess just moving on from that, to explain the eligibility criteria kind of in more depth, and also to answer one of the questions that was asked earlier. So the question being, are there any minimum amount of queries that need to be served to be eligible? So to be eligible, there are a minimum number of queries. That at the minute, that's just 1 query. So it's as relaxed as it could possibly be. However, that one query actually has to be served on five separate days over a given 28-day period. So this kind of is in place to stop indexers from turning their infrastructure on for 20 minutes, for example, serving a query and then calling it a day and turning it off, and then repeat every 28 days. So at least now an indexer would have to at least be up for 5 days in a 28-day period, and this is kind of like a very low bar, and hopefully it's just there to prevent indexers from trying to game the system by turning their infrastructure on for a very short amount of time and then turning it off. And we kind of define what an eligible or a qualifying query is. So just serving one query is not actually enough. The one query has to be what I define as a qualifying query. And that is that it has a HTTP response status of 200 OK. It needs to be answered. So from the gateway's perspective, when the gateway sends the query to the indexer, it's recording how long it took for the indexer to respond. And this is quite relaxed, really. The indexer's infrastructure just needs to respond within 5 seconds. And then as well, the query needs to be, or the RPC, I guess, that was syncing the subgraph, that subgraph needs to be less than 50,000 blocks behind chainhead. I also see that we're at time, so maybe I'll just ask, do people want me to continue, or should I save this for next week?
There's a couple of questions in the chat, so maybe we can address those, and then I was thinking maybe what we could do is we could save the rest for the next week. How much more do you have to go? Because we have a lot of time next week that I can give to you guys. So yeah.
I guess I would probably just start by covering the criteria just to make sure that we're clear on it.
Yeah.
And then give people a chance to ask questions. And then I would kind of just lead on to the dashboard that the foundation has provided us, and just kind of show some on-chain transactions. So I don't think it would take too long, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. But I guess
Okay.
it depends on questions.
Yeah. Let's answer the questions in the chat now, and then you don't have to rush. You can take your time next week. Seems like Josh also wants you to take time next week as well. Just because there'll probably be more follow-up questions and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe we can turn our attention to the chat with the questions, and then we'll bring it back next week to finish off.
Okay, so if a new indexer joins the network, would they not receive rewards for the first 5 days? Yeah, essentially that's correct. Because we wouldn't have enough data, so yeah, they would need to serve at least one qualifying query 5 days consecutively, and then that would make them eligible for rewards. Once eligible, as Rem has already said, then eligibility lasts 14 days. So even if they turned off their infrastructure, then on the 6th day and didn't continue to answer any more queries, then their eligibility would retain for 14 days following that point. And do they need to requalify across data services? So that's a good question.
So at the moment, I guess we only know how to measure it for one data service. So we would have to add the same feature into another data service. we
And say something on that we are looking to replicate this pattern for other data services as well, and make sure that any issuance rewards are tied to actual value provided on the Graph network. So this is something that is being explored on how this can look like at with other data services. So, but with this Rio, it would only be for subgraphs data service.
Okay. Well, I guess thank you everyone for listening to our presentation, and I'll hand it back to Abel.
Amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Hal had a question here saying, turn on for 5 days, turn off for 23 days. I'm assuming, yeah, you guys answered that with the window there, right? Just to confirm.
So yeah, in theory, you could turn on your infrastructure for 5 days, be eligible for the next 14, and then you're right, but actually, because the 5 days of uptime is still recorded within a 28-day period, the Oracle would continue to mark you as eligible. So yeah, you could turn off for the entire 23 days, and then you would still have eligibility for another 14 days after that. So in the last 5 days of those 14 days following the 23 days, you would then want to turn your infrastructure back on if that was your plan to kind of game the system. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. The criteria will sort of ramp up over time to if we see indexes as starting to do that, which we're not anticipating, then obviously the criteria would kind of like adjust over time to prevent those kinds of economic games.
Amazing. Josh is making jokes in the chat. Don't challenge us. Well, the requirements will go higher and higher, so no gaming the system. But appreciate you sharing the clarity there, Sam, so people will know what the deal is. Just final comment: if we observe a lot of indexes doing that, then the criteria will increase to cover that. The initial criteria is intended to get everyone serving queries with a low bar to meet initially. Yeah, I think the current bar is quite generous. So obviously, the team will play it by ear depending on how things play out. Okay, as I said, we're gonna loop back on this next week. We'll invite Rem and Sam back to cover off the rest of the stuff that they want to talk about and answer any additional questions. So rest assured, all your questions will be answered. But in the meantime, I want to thank them, and I also want to thank the rest of you for joining today's IOH. If Tomas is still here, I also want to thank him as well for his segment, and also Slim. Appreciate you guys and everyone else here for joining today's IOH. We wish you a fantastic rest of your week, and as always, we'll see you same time next week for another edition of Index Office Hours, guys. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.